Sunday, the Ridgely Theater in Fort Worth had the biggest day in its entire history. It sold more than The Godfather, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Superman, and Love Story. But the biggest surprise to theater employees is the number of parents bringing young children to see Alien. Did you know that this was an R-rated movie when you brought him?
Yes, we did.
Are you sorry you brought him?
Yes, I am.
Are you glad you saw it?
Yeah.
Are you sorry, sir, that you brought your son along to see Alien?
No, ma'am, I think he should have seen it. It's something that he needs to know, that things like that could happen in life. That could be a true story, based on, science. We never know what's going on the outside of the world.
Did the movie scare you at all?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
We take him to see a lot of horror pictures and things like that, because we like horror movies. We're horror buffs, I guess.
Would you recommend to your little friends who are your age to go see it?
No, I wouldn't.
It's here. You hear what I'm telling you? In my mind, I created it. I told you, I created it, and it's real. Don't you understand?
Hello everyone, welcome to Struggle Session. I'm your host Leslie Lee III. Thank you so much for joining us today as we kick off spooky season with an episode with special guest, film critic Jeff Zhang. Thank you all once again for your continued support, whether you're listening on Spreaker, on YouTube, or if you've taken the extra step and have subscribed to us on Patreon, patreon.com/struggle session, or strugglesession.substack.com, or on Supercast at sesh.show, where you can get all those links. Thank you if you've left a 5-star review. Big thank you to everyone for the great feedback we got on our last episode on COVID-19 with special guest Julia Doubleday. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, make sure you have. If you got some friends or family that need to hear that episode, share it with them. Again, thank you so much for the great feedback on that episode. Coming up this week, already recorded, since we're doing Aliens today, later this week, we'll be talking Predator, the entire series. My homie Aaron from Trillbillies will be joining us. We go through the whole series from Predator to Prey, have a great conversation. And those are some great movies, really great movies. Pretty much all the Predator movies are good. Like, pretty much all of the Alien movies are good. Anyway, we get into that in today's episode with Jeff. We talk the latest film, as well as kind of the series as a whole and where this film places within it. So let's get into it. Alien Romulus.
Wait. Do you see it? There.
Fucking thing's hunting us.
Right. New plan. Can you manage yourself with the gun?
Yes, I fucking can. Right, this is an F-44 AA pulse rifle. It's rotating breech electronic pulse action. That's what the Colonial Marines used. AA stands for aiming assist. So right, you put that under your arm. Right, this side, aim it towards Andy. Pull the trigger halfway. Don't worry, the safety zone. See? Aiming assistance. That thing comes towards you. You point it in this general direction, you'll never miss.
Where'd you learn all this?
Games and magazines.
Jeff, what did you think of Alien Romulus?
Big disappointment. I was really excited for this movie, but it really brought nothing to the table for me, and it just isn't as interesting as any of the movies that came before, I feel.
I mean, I felt basically the same way. Let's talk about the excitement, because I still remember that first teaser trailer. That was great. That looked amazing.
Oh,
That
all the
hinted-
marketing's been amazing. The posters, the trailers, the teasers. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the film has a great look, and it looked really cool. And that's one thing I'll say is good about the film. As far as visuals go, as far as production design, ship design, I think it was very good, very excellent. But nearly everything else in the movie was at best okay, tolerable. It was so strange. I was really excited for this one. I thought it would be good. Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez, and I liked his, Evil Dead. I thought it was pretty good, and I was really excited to see this new voice take on the Aliens franchise, because as sure as you talked about, Jeff, like all the Aliens movies basically really have the voice of the vision of the director there. Even, Alien 3 with David Fincher has its own. It still feels like a David Fincher movie, but you didn't really pick up on that in this one.
No, so I really like Fede Alvarez too, and I'm a huge defender of the Evil Dead reboot that he did. And that was a movie that was kind of hard to stomach. The gore was pretty much out of control in that, and I loved that. And this movie didn't even go nearly as hard. I thought we were going to get something pretty nasty with this, and I think this was probably the tamest Alien movie out of all of them.
How did we get fooled? This is the first Disney Alien movie, and it really felt like that in a lot of ways, like significant ways, like just starting off, right? Characters of this film, young characters, teen characters. I felt this way. A lot of people were saying it. It felt like if the CW was commissioning an Alien pilot.
No, I'm just agreeing. Yeah, absolutely.
Aliens has always been grown folks' business, and like working class grown folk. Now these kids have been through some shit. They're like street urchins or something. You need to be grizzled if you're going to be in an Aliens movie or a Predator movie, frankly. You need to have some kind of grizz to you, some kind of grit.
Yeah, I agree. Although I will say that maybe it's not the fault of the cast. I think there is a different feel to this younger cast, which is a detriment, but I think it's mostly a script issue. They just don't feel like they're lived in characters, because the original Alien, there's this blue collar, like you said, grit to it that I love. Those characters feel so lived in, and you have all these character actors. Of course, you have Sigourney Weaver, John Hurt, Yaphet Kotto. They're so real in those movies. And even extending to all the other movies, like 2 with the Marines, they also feel like they're real characters. 3, the prisoners, and just going through the franchise. And Romulus, they're just kind of nothing here. Although I will say that David Johnson is a standout as Andy the android. He's definitely the best part of the movie.
Yeah, best part of the movie, best character. But one thing I didn't like, just starting off from the very beginning, and maybe this is a nitpick, but generally speaking, in the Aliens franchise, you don't know who the final person is going to be. You don't know who the main character is going to be, essentially, right? Like at least you're supposed to, as like when it started with Ripley, and then when you look at Prometheus, you're not really, I don't know if you know going in, like who's going to survive that, or Covenant. It's not so obvious. In this movie, it's extremely obvious because they introduced the characters completely separately. You're told exactly from the beginning who are the 2 characters that actually matter, which is Rain and her android brother, Andy, which, look, just starting off, there is a little bit of a strange kind of Huckleberry Finn sort of aspect to it, because it's a younger white woman with an older black brother, but he is a damaged android, so he's really kind of subservient to her. That was kind of a strange vibe. It does change later on, but it was kind of a strange start to it, especially since you don't meet any of the other characters until like several minutes later. So instead of being introduced to this group that's bonded, you're told immediately, all right, these are two characters that are going to make it towards the end, and the others, they're just kind of here to be the fodder.
Yeah, that's such a great point, actually. I didn't even pick up on that dynamic until you pointed that out, but absolutely.
The original teaser trailer, there's the suggestion that there's going to be some massive alien outbreak on this colony world that this movie is set in. And you see this big colony world in the first few minutes of the film, and you focus on the teen characters and their issue. They want to get off world. They want to get to a better place. And then the film basically abandons all that cool sci-fi shit in the background and then becomes about like these 5 characters. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very small movie that hints at a bigger movie. In fact, I actually skipped over the introduction where they bring in the alien, and apparently there's this massive outbreak on this large space science vessel space station owned by Weyland-Yutani. We don't see that.
Yeah, we don't see any of it.
We don't see any of that. We only see the aftermath. And I couldn't help but thinking like that was a much more interesting movie. Instead we just follow this team of, kind of this teen team of, street urchins and this android when they try to break into the station to steal some cryo tubes in order to go off to a slightly less shitty planet.
Yeah, and I mean, the big defenders of this movie say that there's something interesting going on with this movie thematically, where it's about, a new generation, the children of the people used by Weyland-Yutani in the older movies, or something like that. And I would actually agree with that. That's an interesting thing to play with, but they don't do anything with it, I don't think. I don't think they do anything thematically interesting at all. And anything that's even remotely kind of fun is just a rehash of the older movies, and not done nearly as well, I feel.
Oh, so much rehashing. I was actually, I don't know how deep, how fast we're going to get into it, but there's several moments in this film where I was like, I could not believe they were doing this. I could not believe they were doing this. And then I realized again, oh, this is a Disney produced movie. Of course they are doing this. And they are doing this moment is when they bring back Ian Holm as a character called Rook, who is an android that is cut in half. Not how his original character was cut in half, but how Bishop is cut in half at the end of Aliens. So it's like a weird double callback, and again, this is an actor who has passed. His family apparently approved his cameo, but it's not a cameo. He's like a main essential character in the movie, but it's this horrific AI CGI sort of puppet combination that just looks extremely uncanny in a not good way. It's probably the weirdest thing in the film, creepiest thing in the film, which is not a good thing for an Alien movie.
Yeah, even ethics aside, it looks like dog shit, right? It looks so bad, and you can say that they got the estate's permission, but I mean, ethically, estates clearly always have the best interest of the deceased at heart and not have money on their mind, right? I'm sure they got a pretty paycheck. You still can't ask Ian Holm if he would have approved this. You don't know, right? So ethically, I still think it's quite murky, and I just don't like it.
Very distracting, and it was completely inessential. That character could have been literally anybody. It could have been a new actor. It did not matter. It was just fan service for the sake of it, which I was so surprised to see in this movie, because when you look at every other Alien movie, even if you're talking about Alien versus Predator series, like all of those creators were trying to make something new. Even when Ridley Scott was going back, he was given new weird shit. All right. Yeah. Why? It was so strange to me to see this movie do so many callbacks and one-liner references, and it was just a very strange. It felt very like insecure. It's like, and especially for a film where people were on board, people were excited to see this, people were ready for this. It's a big hit. It could have been a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it's like, look at Ripley sneakers, It's just all these things and the one-liners. So Andy says the line, "Get away from her, you bitch," which doesn't even work coming from him. That's not a personality that either of his iterations have, his android programming. So it doesn't make sense for him to say that. It's just a whole mess of fan service that really rubbed me the wrong way.
As I said, the visuals, they're very cool. They get to the spaceship, and we're about 30, 45 minutes in the film before we see aliens or any of these creatures, and there's just no real tension except for maybe a little bit in the beginning. It doesn't feel, strangely enough, much like a horror movie a lot of the times. It feels, it just, I wasn't scared for any of the characters. The characters are, if you judge them by how many times they're able to escape from face huggers and xenomorphs, they're the most skilled of any of the alien crews. Now, they all make it to the end, but they're able to get out of these scrapes, and it ends up not feeling very dangerous. When you see the clip in the trailer of those face huggers running down the hall, and it's like it looks like 50 face huggers running down the hall, and you're like, oh shit, it's going to be like 50 people getting infected or something. But no, it's like 2 people and they get away.
Yeah, I mean, do you think this is the worst one?
See, here's the thing. I had to think about it. Because I felt that way about the Batman. I was kind of looking forward to the Batman. Then when I watched it, I was like, this is literally the worst one. I would rather watch Batman or Robin before this again. I really thought it was the worst one. And I'm not trying to just be a curmudgeon who just hates everything new, but
with the Matt Reeves one.
Yeah, the Matt Reeves one. I thought that
I can respect that. I can respect that.
Thought it was the worst one. But with this movie, I do think it is the worst Aliens movie. I think it fairly, if not counting Requiem, because I don't really count Requiem. I think it's like a fucking, basically like they did it just to keep the rights kind of thing.
You're
like
watching
I
a
really
black screen for 2 hours. Can't see anything in that movie.
Oh yeah, I don't really think it counts. As far as the movies that I think actually count, it is the worst one, but I still think probably all the Alien movies are worth watching. I still got a little bit of something out of this. Not a lot, not as much as I should have, but I don't think people are wasting their time with this movie where I might say that about, say, Wolverine versus Deadpool.
Yeah, I mean, I hated Deadpool and Wolverine, and I won't say that this is quite as bad on that level, but I do think this is probably the worst Alien movie, the crossover is notwithstanding, right? Like, people say Resurrection is worse, but I actually think that Resurrection is not perfect, but thematically I think it's stronger. There's a thread of motherhood, and there's a tragedy to it, and there's some gnarly set pieces in that movie that I really, really love. And there's nothing like that in Romulus, even remotely close to it, right?
Oh, not even close. There's no action scenes as cool as the one where they're going through the tunnels.
Yeah.
And a guy is tied to another guy's back and they're shooting upside down. There's some cool shit in Resurrection. And it's gross too. It's really gross and weird.
When she kills her own clones, that was so fucked up, right? Like, she has to euthanize her own clones and one's still alive and they're all mutated and disgusting. Ugh, that hits, and there's nothing like that in Romulus at all.
Nothing at all that really approaches that level of just distinct weirdness. But except for one thing, I think people will object, but this is something that they just basically lifted from Resurrection, which is at the end when there's a human alien hybrid type creature as the final boss. And it's pretty weird and fucked up looking, but the one in Resurrection was even weirder and more fucked up. And it's so close to the same sort of ending and set piece. It was very strange. I actually saw someone say that Fede Alvarez was gobsmacked when someone pointed out to him the similarities. I'm not sure if that's a true story, but like it's very, very strangely similar. And it was just strange to me. They would pick a lot of people consider Resurrection the worst Alien movie, but then this new one basically lifts the third act from it, and people dig it. People love it.
Yeah, and there's a tragedy to the ending of Resurrection where the hybrid has clearly formed a bond with this cloned Ripley, and she has to kill it. And there's nothing like that in this one. It's just this goofy engineer alien hybrid, and it just doesn't really work. It doesn't land in any sort of way. And like you said, it's pretty much just a rehash, and it's not as good, right? So
right. I'm glad you said it. It was not a human alien hybrid. It's an engineer alien hybrid, which was interesting to me because I thought this movie would like not reference Prometheus or Covenant, but it did like on multiple occasions. It took it all in. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it just made me think, wow, I would much rather have a third David movie than this movie.
And I just want to talk about Prometheus and Covenant for a bit because I fucking love those movies. They're so interesting, and I think the reclamation of those movies is a little weird because Prometheus was the highest grossing movie of that franchise, right? And people are trying to say that, oh, we're trying to rehabilitate its image or whatever. But I guess what happened was that everyone was incredibly hyped to see it, and it ended up being not what people wanted. You have this semi-secret alien prequel, but it mostly hand waves a lot of the xenomorph mythology away in favor of something much more existential, right? And instead focuses on these goofy-looking engineers and Ridley's career-long fascination with androids. And I love every minute of those two movies. They're, I think, 3 and 4 on my ranking. Of course, after the first two.
It's so funny. I was watching clips of Romulus before this, and it just, it kept auto playing. And then I didn't notice they had switched from Romulus to Covenant, and I was seeing all these clips from Covenant of all the aliens, like not even aliens, but the weird shit bursting out of people's back and all this stuff. And there was so much cool, weird shit in this trailer, and it's actually called Alien Covenant, Alien Romulus style trailer. So they took the same beats, but there's like 10 times as much stuff in the Covenant trailer as there is in the Romulus trailer. Like the Romulus is all the tease and the mystery, and that was effective for the trailer. But when you actually get to the movie, there's not a whole lot there, sadly.
Yeah.
When Prometheus and Covenant, whatever you feel about those movies, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on in them. There's a lot of ideas there. I do have to say, because I have to slander Damon Lindelof every time there's an opportunity. The original script before he made a pass was better. The scientists were smarter. Just headcanon, pretend that they filmed the original script and it's a better movie.
Yeah, I don't even buy the criticism that everyone's so stupid in these movies and therefore it doesn't make any sense. I mean, just look at real life. People act a fool all the time,
I mean, post-COVID,
Exactly.
basically anything is acceptable. You can expect anything. It doesn't matter if they're high-level scientists or not.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no such thing as an idiot plot anymore, right? Because just look at real life. And the thing with stuff with Prometheus is like thematically it's so interesting too, right? Because you're doing away with a lot of the horror movie stuff of the creature feature on the ship and stuff, and it's all in favor of, I always say that the movies are about this, like, what if you meet God and you find out that he fucking hates you, right? And I think that's so interesting thematically, and it sucks that Romulus has nothing like that. Or like even the sense of wonder that the beginning of Prometheus has, right? Because it opens up with the engineer killing himself and seeding the earth with life. And then they do the cave discovery. And then it's the introduction of David. It's such an interesting movie. And then it devolves into something so mean-hearted and cruel. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Prometheus, but I really dig Covenant. I
Me
really
too.
like
Me too.
Covenant. Covenant is actually third on my
Same.
list behind Aliens.
Same. 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 Okay. So my whole ranking is Alien, Aliens, Covenant, Prometheus, Alien 3, Resurrection, and then Romulus last.
Okay. Mine is Alien, Aliens, Covenant, Alien versus Predator, which I love. I think is
Oh,
at the
including
Mountains
the
of Madness.
crossovers. Okay, I didn't include the crossovers.
I love AVP because it's at the Mound of Madness.
Yeah.
With Sinai Latham is cool. Then Resurrection, Prometheus, Alien 3, which I just have not really gotten into yet. Is I owe it another watch because people love that movie. People have really come around on that movie. And then Romulus dead last, sadly.
You have to track down the assembly cut of Alien 3 because the theatrical's butchered.
Yeah, I did. Like I
Okay.
was in Japan, and like in Japan they still have video rental stores, and you can get like 5 Blu-rays for like $7 for a week. So I would go through all these different, franchises, Fast franchise, Predator franchise, and I did Alien. I got the assembly cut, and I just I couldn't even get through it. It's just I've never liked that movie. Even the first time I watched it, I remember renting it on VHS from Blockbuster and being very excited, but there's just something about that movie that I just don't like. It's a bit too dour, and it's strange because it technically is kind of a crossover with Riddick. David Toohey, who wrote the creator of Riddick, did the pass on the script, and I love Riddick. I absolutely, positively love Riddick, but Alien 3 has just never been for me, but I'll give it another shot sometime.
So I'm assuming that killing Newton Hicks is a no for you. You don't like that decision.
It actually doesn't. It actually never bothered me.
Okay.
It never bothered me because I saw it when I was a kid. I didn't have like a strong connection to Newt or Hicks. It's just and it's funny that you mentioned that because is a script written by William Gibson for Alien 3, which features Newt and Hicks because Sigourney Weaver wasn't going to come back initially, and they actually have a full cast audiobook with and where actually a couple of the actual actors reprise their roles, and it's pretty good. It's pretty interesting. And I think the Aliens comic book series that were put out by Dark Horse, they assumed that Newt and Hicks survived and wrote comics
canonically, right? I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you miss them, you have your options. I'm not a partisan in that war for Newt and Hicks. That seems kind of strange, a little bit strange to me to be so focused on that.
Yeah, I agree.
And I forgot there's actually in the video game for I think Colonial Marines, they retcon it so that Newt and Hicks live, but also Alien 3 happens somehow. I don't know how they do it, but they somehow all survive.
Yeah, I guess if you want them to survive, you got your outlets, right? So
yes.
Yeah. And then speaking of supplemental stuff for these movies, did you know about the plan originally for the engineers and the reason they wanted to kill all the humans? It was that Ridley wrote in the original script that Jesus was an engineer.
Yes,
and
that's right.
we killed him. So
that's right.
Engineers like, fuck that, these people have to go. So I love that too. I wish they kept that in the movie. It's so goofy and silly, but it's so Ridley Scott. I love that stuff. It's so fun to me.
I like it. I love it. I like weird shit in Alien. Why did Fede make this plain as, boring as, weak as? Still watchable, I guess. Still watchable, but, pretty weak Alien movie.
Yeah, I agree. Big disappointment.
All right. Well, Jeff, I've talked about this disappointing movie with you long enough, but you are the man who makes the year-end videos.
Oh, I am, yeah.
Could you drop a few, excuse me, I should say for people who don't know, these are year-end videos showing all the best movies of the year. You've been making them for a few years. They're excellent. What's are some movies that are obviously Romulus probably not going to make it this year, but what are some movies that are going to make it?
Romulus might make it. I don't discriminate against movies that I'm not a fan of. I mean, it's still representative of the movies this year, so it might make an
It did
appearance.
happen.
But Furiosa is probably going to be on there. The Beast. What other stuff that I really liked? Chime this year I really liked. Hitman. Uh, Oddity, I really liked. The First Omen. I fucking love The First
Oh,
Omen.
I love The First Omen. It's so good. It's so good.
I was going back and listening to some of your episodes, and I was listening to the one where you hated Civil War, you thought Fallout was fun, and you loved The First Omen. So all three things that I agree with. I love that stuff. Totally on board.
Thank you. Well, Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me on my site at strangeharbors.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Strange Harbors.
All right, folks, that was Struggle Session. Have a good one. Peace.